AM.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Ladies and gents, take a listen to this. Oh, yes, 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 I like it. What was that? That was women celebrating this momentous occasion, ladies and gents, because the Supreme Court has ruled what, let's face it, most of us already believed anyway, that biology matters, especially when it comes to what is a woman. I will be looking at that verdict today, but sorry to rain on the parade, ladies and gents, because less positive, uplifting news. Apparently, we may be in for a summer of discontent. What am I talking about? Strikes, of course. Oh, I'm quite giddy, ladies and gents, today. I can't help it. I really can't. You'll know how passionate I am about that first topic. Helen Joyce joins me in the studio to talk about that. Also, Charlie Downs alongside me, as is Aaron Bastani. But before we get stuck into it all, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you and good evening. It's 1 minute past 6. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. The top story today, the Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex and not gender identity.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
It means gender recognition certificates do not change someone's legal sex for single-sex services like rape crisis centres or hospital wards. Campaigners have hailed it a victory for biology and a watershed moment for women and same-sex attracted people. LGBT charity Stonewall says the ruling is incredibly worrying for the transgender community. However, the court reaffirmed protection from discrimination for trans people remains. The Scottish Government is, quote, keen to work with the UK Government on gender reforms, but has no intention of revising its own plans at Holyrood, the Scottish Finance Secretary, Shona Robertson, has said. Well, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, welcomes the ruling.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
Well, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, also gave his reaction a short while ago.
We accept entirely the court's ruling, as you'd expect, and they've brought greater clarity to the Equality Act, which many people had been confused about for some time. I think now we need the government and the Equality and Human Rights Commission to bring forward better guidance so the implications of this court ruling can be well understood by businesses and by individuals.
Elsewhere, Home Office official figures have confirmed that at least 705 migrants crossed the English Channel in 12 small boats yesterday, a new one-day record for illegal arrivals this year. That figure surpasses the previous record, which was set on Friday, where 656 people made the journey. The latest crossings take the number of small boat migrants who've made the journey so far this year to nearly 9,000. The figures are around 40% higher than the 6,265 who crossed at this point last year. A Home Office spokesman said that they are intensifying collaboration with France and other countries over tackling the gang's business models and introducing tougher enforcement powers under new legislation. To American news, and it's been announced today that US Vice President J.D. Vance will visit Italy and India from Friday of this week, with the White House adding that he will discuss shared economic and geopolitical priorities with the leaders in each country. Vance is expected to meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome and with the Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin. In India, he's set to meet with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and visit New Delhi, Jaipur and Agra. And in another development, the White House announced that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and White House envoy Steve Witkoff will travel to Paris today to meet with European counterparts for talks on ending Russia's war in Ukraine. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Dewbs & Co.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Katie. I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, and we are with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Now, there is a lot to be depressed about in this country, but finally, ladies and gents, something to be relieved about. Yes, it is indeed official. I'm talking, of course, about the UK Supreme Court. It has today given clarity on things that most people knew all along, that sex matters, that sex is biological, and that a woman is an adult human female. But why was all this necessary, I hear you cry? What's the big deal, Michelle, given that only a minuscule amount of people are trans? Well, it's this.
Transphobic, yes or no?
Look, is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
A woman can have a penis.
Look, I'm not. I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know.
Sorry, have I offended you in something?
No. It's just. No. I just.
Absolutely embarrassing, because for a very long time now, people seem to have lost their minds. They have been captured by an extreme trans ideology, an ideology which I would say is sought to undermine basic biological reality and, crucially, erode women's rights. Language has been contorted and distorted. Us women have been reduced to people who menstruate, chest feeders, and those with a cervix. But don't forget, of course, David Lammy even thinks that men can grow one of those. We've, of course, been told that we've got to share our single-sex spaces with any man who simply utters the magical words, "I identify as a woman." Yet we women, we've been abused and threatened and heckled and cancelled. We've lost our jobs and our crime believing in the truth and wanting to protect women and girls. We've, along the way, had male crimes assigned to us, and our children have been encouraged to what I would say follow and believe fiction. The list goes on. We've been told we must put up and we must shut up. But yet today, women were not silent. Oh yes, they sang and they roared and they brought tears to my eyes. Because if you ask me, they've been vindicated. As we've always said, truth matters, sex matters. And in my opinion today, that has finally been recognised. So, too, for Women's Scotland, I say thank you. And to all of the other women who have fought and suffered, and you know who you are, I say it again, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, as a woman and as a mummy, thank you. And to the politicians, the institutions, the organisations, and all of the media who have allowed all of this to become so absurd, I simply say this: shame on you. I feel better. Yeah. Got that off my chest. I do. I feel absolutely better, ladies and gents. I can't lie about that. We're with you till 7 o'clock. Look who's alongside me, Charlie Downs and Aaron Bastani, but also joining me tonight, Helen Joyce, the Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. I can't help it. I know that the judge in the Supreme Court today, Helen, said, you know, nobody should see this as a triumph and all the rest of it. But I feel that women who have been crying out for years, please, don't erode our rights. Please keep women and children safe. I believe they've been vindicated. What's your reaction to this ruling today?
It was 10 out of 10. We prepared, we scenario planned, we said it could be anything from a dire defeat for women's rights to an absolute endorsement, a ringing endorsement, and it was the ringing endorsement end of the scale. It was very emotional to be there in court today to listen to it. We didn't know what the judgment was going to be. Nobody did. The court just said to people on last Thursday, today we're going to give our verdict. Nobody was given pre-sight of it, not the lawyers, not anybody. So we sat there in court and they started the preamble about, you know, how important this was and women's rights and blah, blah, blah. And we're sitting there going, get to the punchline, say, did we win? Did we win? And then it became clear that For Women Scotland had won. And I mean, I don't know how people stay quiet through it, because of course you've got to while you're in the court. You've got to behave yourself. But, you know, it was a triumph for the right legal arguments. It was a triumph, funnily enough, for statutory interpretation, which sounds dull. But what the judges did is they said that if you allow the Gender Recognition Act to stick a spanner in the works of the Equality Act, which is the big overarching anti-discrimination law in this country that protects everybody's human rights, but especially women's, then you break it. It can't operate as it was meant to. So they took that spanner back out, and now we have it operating properly again, and I'm very emotional about that.
I mean, you and me both. In case you're just tuning in, you're going, what is Michelle going on about now? The Supreme Court here in this country, this was unanimous, by the way. It was not anything close or anything like that, not at all. It was an overwhelming judgment, and essentially it's ruled that the use of the terms woman and sex in UK law under the Equality Act 2010 does indeed refer to biological sex. And this has all started, it goes back basically to I think it was 2018, where the Scottish Government, they wanted to put like what I would call quotas essentially on public boards, and they wanted 50% of those people to be women. Fair enough if that's your thing, but they defined women essentially to include men with a certificate, a piece of paper. Now I need to be clear, Helen. This is, you and I are probably on a similar side with this. We feel passionate about women's rights. This is not an anti-trans movement.
That's completely correct. It's open to the Scottish Government to say that it wants to do positive actions for trans people, and that will be fine. If you looked and you said there was a situation in which trans people were underrepresented and there was a reason that you thought it was the right thing to do to have a special programme for trans people, that would be fine. That's the way the law acts. They did something worse than that in 2018. They actually said that they were going to count woman as anybody who just said they were a woman. And For Women Scotland took them to court for that and won. And then instead of just tucking their tail between their legs and skedaddling off, what they did is they came back with woman means anyone who has a piece of paper saying that they're a woman. And that's the Gender Recognition Certificate. This is this law that dates from 2004 that allows you to get a piece of paper saying you've changed sex. Look, people can't change sex. And that holds in some situations and not in others. It's a complex piece of law. And the question was, does it hold for the Equality Act? Do you move out of the group of women into the group of men if you get that piece of paper, and out of the group of men into the group of women if you get that piece of paper? And that turns the two sexes into mixed sex groups. So how can you think about sex discrimination if the two sexes are mixed sex groups? How can you think about anything, what women need, what men need? It was a nonsense, and the Supreme Court recognised that, and they did this wonderful 4-page summary that they read out in court, and it touched on all the important points: pregnancy and maternity, women's long struggle for equality, the fact that this does not harm trans people's rights, because there are separate rights for trans people.
Absolutely.
All of them, even the ones who don't have pieces of paper. They specifically said there aren't two classes of trans people, the ones with pieces of paper and ones without. They said that we can't tell who's trans. They said we can't tell from looking at a man whether he identifies as a woman or has a piece of paper saying he's a woman. They brought it right back to reality.
And I want to, because there'll be some people at home today that are sitting there saying, do you know, this conversation about trans rights and women's rights and all the rest of it, it's so overrepresented in the media. Because I look at my inbox, I see what you all say, and you're quite divided on this. Some of you will be saying, you know what, why are you talking about trans rights? Again, this is a minuscule amount of the population. It's getting disproportionate coverage. Are you of that mindset, Charlie Downs?
It's funny you say that, because that was the first point I was going to make, because trans people do account for 0.54% of the UK population as of the 2021 census, which is a vanishingly small number of people, and yet they occupy so much time when it comes to, you know, media, like political discussions in the media and in the press and all that sort of thing. And I think that, you know, whilst it's obviously an important issue, and whilst today is obviously a victory for common sense, and I am hugely supportive of this ruling, I can't help but think that the time spent talking about this issue, which ultimately pertains to a very small number of people. I mean, sure, obviously we make the case that it affects women's rights more generally, but I can't help but think that there are more pressing issues at this time, such as, you know, migration, cost of living, the fact that young people can't buy houses and that sort of thing. And so all the while we hear media talking heads saying things like, well, actually women can't have penises and that kind of thing, I can't help but think that it's a little bit sensationalist, right? And I worry as well that it gives an easy win to essentially, well, on the left, it gives an easy win to people who can say, look, we're not like those crazy wokesters. We don't think that men can turn into women. Perhaps like the gentleman sitting to my left may well believe that.
Do you believe that, Aaron Bastani?
I'll give a fulsome answer in the course of time if you'd like me to. I don't want to eat into Charlie's opportunity.
Yeah, we're going to. Well, actually, we're going to carry on this conversation.
Because I'm the outlier here, I think.
We're going to carry on this conversation after the break. But what would you say, Helen, to that mindset? Oh, why are they talking about this issue? It's disproportionate coverage, etc.
It's funny how we're the ones who are meant to stay quiet. Like, if it's that tiny an issue, then why did they push this on us in the first place? Why did they break the Equality Act, which protects 100% of people by their sex, for this tiny number? And then when we say, hang on, half the population is women, you've just broken the laws that protect us, they say, oh, it's only a tiny number of people. Well, if that's the case, stop talking about them and let us have our rights back. That's the easy way out.
What I would say back to you, Charlie Downs, is when people say to me, which they do often, I hear you at home, because many of you will be emailing in exactly the sentiment that Charlie's just offered there. Oh, move on, you know, enough now. I would say this. Women are the majority of this population. And what has happened to us, as I tried to allude to in my opening gambit there, this is not just about the minuscule number of people on a census who say that they're trans. And by the way, that question, I think it was misunderstood by a lot of people, so I think the number's not even accurate. But anyway, it is now become about the very notion of being a woman in society. This has impacted and affected everything from our ability to get undressed in a gym changing room. We now have to accept the fact that any guy, as long as he says, oh yeah, you know, I identify with being a woman, he can come in, he's allowed in our space and see us and little girls in our changing rooms. We are now referred to as chest feeders and things like that. So all of the language about us, when it comes to our healthcare, lots of women, we all need to have cervical smears. We don't know that in lots of cases now. Young girls are not told you've got to have a cervical smear, because what happens is it's people with a cervix are called into things. So it's causing so much confusion. So this is much, much broader. It's become much, much deeper. The way our children are taught and educated, this spans all of womanhood now, ladies and gents. And that's why I make absolutely no apologies, and I will never apologise for having these conversations, because what's happened to us, what's happened to our rights, our freedom of speech and our single-sex spaces has been, in my opinion, categorically wrong. The conversation continues. You can join it all the usual ways. Aaron Bastani will have a lot to say, I'm sure, as will Helen, after the break.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The great thing is that this is going to be the perfect summer to stay in the UK. A couple of reasons for that. The first one is, well, yeah, you can't do much about the weather, but what you can do is save an absolute fortune. I've been looking at, for instance, all the tourist attractions around Europe. The prices are going through the roof. You want to go and see some beautiful pictures in the Prado in Madrid, that's going to cost you over 30 quid. And yet, here in the UK, all our big cultural attractions are free. And furthermore, you will be doing the country a favour because the best thing you can possibly do is spend money here, create jobs, pay taxes and make things just a little bit better than they are now.
So, Joe, does that convince you to take a staycation this year?
Well, my staycation will be here in Tenerife for sure. I want the guaranteed sunshine, and I want the cleaner air and the cheap places to eat. I mean, Simon was talking about the costs, but in Tenerife, you go into the mountains and the hillside areas, you can still get a 3-course meal for under €20, very good quality. There's arguments, obviously, for both sides, but I think for most people, it's just that guaranteed dose of sunshine that people are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to get away from that, Simon, isn't it? That we do want the weather.
Yeah, but we just got to recalibrate, honestly. And tell you what, there's going to be an awful lot of people who are going to be travelling to Tenerife, other places, particularly around the Mediterranean, this coming Easter, because they've literally been scorched over the past couple of years in July and in particular August. Very, very high temperatures. Brits have had enough of too much sunshine.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Dewbs and Kurt. With me, Michelle Dewberry. Let's just take a moment to listen. Go on. I can't help it. I could even change my ringtone to that, actually. I'm half tempted, but I won't. Look, alongside me, Charlie Downs, the political commentator, Aaron Bastani, the founder of Novara Media, and special guest for a little while, Helen Joyce, the director of advocacy at Sex Matters. Of course, ladies and gents, if you just tuned in, we're talking about that, what I would say, great news, when it comes to the Supreme Court ruling. In fact, actually, should we have a listen to the judge? Because you might, I don't know, where you might have been all day, you might have been doing something different, you might have been working, you might not know what on earth I'm talking about. This was the moment that the ruling was announced in the Supreme Court. Listen.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
Yes, and by the way, if you were watching the show at the start, I was playing some clips, and I do believe that a member of the trans rights protest might have done something with their hand, a rude gesture that they ought not to have done that wasn't fit for Tea Time TV. So if you did see that and you were offended, I do apologise. Aaron Bastani, your thoughts?
So a few things. The Equality Act from 2010 enshrined in law the ability of organisations to have single-sex spaces on the basis of biological gender. Specifically, Schedule 3, Part 7 of the Equality Act protected things like single-sex spaces. So in one case, this isn't really news. And the idea that you didn't have single-sex spaces protected under law was simply not true. Now, whether, of course...
Well, have you got a reaction to that, Helen?
It's correct. It was just that it was hard to keep out the men with certificates. You had to use 2 different routes. You could keep out men without certificates one route and keep out men with certificates another route. And this was complicated. People felt that they needed to be equality law experts to run a pub that had a toilet that said F on the door and a toilet that said M on the door. And they didn't know they could defend themselves if they went to court. Activists misrepresented the law.
Well, this gets to the heart of my second point, which is that I don't even think the Supreme Court should exist. I don't think, arguably, the Equality Act. I don't think the Equality Act should exist. I actually support the whole idea of parliamentary sovereignty, and I think that elected lawmakers should be making and changing laws because we elect them. And I think there's a real worry that we become a country like the United States where unelected judges have much more power than elected politicians. Day after day on GB News, there'll be this or that story where people are, I think, often rightly actually, criticising judges for a particular outcome, and yet today, they're being praised. And I think, you know, you have to fall down on one side or the other of this argument. How much power as a society do we want to give judges, right? You see the wage kind of debate going on right now in Birmingham because that local authority is effectively bankrupt. That's the result of a decision made by a court. You can't, on the one hand, say, that was bad, that should never happen, we should not give that kind of power to courts, and on the other hand, say that actually, today, we've decided this is what a woman is because this court says so. I personally think it's silly. There's many things that, you know, this country fails at, it needs to change, it needs to improve. I really think the status quo ante before 1997, specifically before 2009 with the Supreme Court, was a lot better than what we have today. It was a very common sense way to make and change laws. And I think, as you say, you need to be an expert in law if you want to run a business or, you know, who you're going to let into a change room. I think that's kind of ridiculous, actually, which is why I don't like the Supreme Court as an entity.
What do you think to that at home? You might have some strong opinions. And by the way, I reckon that this might not stop with the Supreme Court. I wouldn't be quite surprised if it didn't carry on going. Do you think it'll carry on going to the European Court of Human Rights?
I don't think there's an avenue for that, actually, for reasons that were explained to me and that I promptly forgot because I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, right.
So I don't think so. I think we have now had the last word on the specific question of whether the Gender Recognition Act impacts on the Equality Act. But listen, Parliament made both those laws. They were drafted poorly. There was an ambiguity in them. Lawyers did a job of statutory interpretation to say how you should resolve the ambiguity. Somebody has to do it. And they did it. And it's honestly, it's massive whataboutery to complain about it being the court. Who else is going to do it?
It's not whataboutery.
No, I'm sorry, I'm speaking now. I listened to you. I listened to you. I listened to you. No, I'm speaking now.
I'm listening to you. I'm replying to you.
No, I listened to you finish your point.
How does our society work? How do we make laws?
It's also a huge question whether biology can be overridden by government-issued pieces of paper. The government intended to in some respects, and it didn't. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that biology shouldn't be overridden by pieces of paper. But anyway, in some laws it is, in some laws it isn't. The Equality Act has bits in it that reads like it is, and bits in it that reads like it isn't. That ambiguity had become untenable. It had become impossible to run ordinary services without getting sued. The Supreme Court has resolved that ambiguity, and now you can. That's the good news. The good news is that lesbians can meet and not have to include heterosexual men with pieces of paper saying they're women, which is what was actually the law until the Supreme Court said, don't be ridiculous.
I need to be clear again that this is not even just about, in some cases, these pieces of paper. If you watch this show regularly, you will know that at my gym, the gym that I used to attend, Virgin Active, in case you're wondering, their policy was that any member could use the changing room of the gender that they most identified with. That was literally their policy. No pieces of paper required. This is absolutely absurd. Louisa just got in touch and said, I'm welling up and I'm not even a sentimental person. Unless you're a woman, you cannot fully understand the ramifications of all of this. She says, we are living in a society where rights that we have long since fought for were under threat. She says that she feels like women have been persecuted. A lot of trans people, I'm going to play you a clip in a second, because the other side of this is a lot of trans people that actually would say that they're very disappointed with this ruling today. Let's just take a listen to someone that was on the channel a little bit earlier on today.
Now, this affects me personally, directly, but you know, in my social life, in my general life, people don't call me a woman. They don't say, look, Frida, you're a woman. They just treat me as a human being. We don't communicate like that. The reason people are asking what is a woman all the time, and they're reducing women's bodies to, you know, biology all the time, and it's a reductive argument. What it does is it removes the humanity from the argument. You only have to watch when somebody brings a bit of light to this argument and maybe questions the motivations of J.K. Rowling or Maya Forstadt, whoever it is, they get piled on so hard on social media that it's almost unbearable. So there is no balance here. The power is with those lobby groups. They're not working on behalf of women. We know that because women's groups don't support them, because they know that institutional and systemic misogyny isn't coming from trans women, and there are no prizes for women at the end of the gender critical movement because it doesn't actually support feminism. It rejects feminism.
You want to respond to that, Aaron?
Well, I think, look, first of all, the idea that it's whataboutery to say that the nature of our constitutional system is at stake here, I think, is absurd. Secondly, the gender recognition certificate as a piece of documentation comes about from law made in 2004. The Equality Act was so poorly drafted that it's basically, I think, going to make redundant a piece of legislation which precedes it. That's how stupid this is. To be clear, those gender recognition certificates are from 2004, 6 years prior to the Equality Act. This whole thing about our rights were under threat, therefore this court has made this decision, that's a good thing. Let's go back to the United States, the overturning of Roe versus Wade. The problem there is you have, again, unelected legislators, a court who nobody votes for, determining whether or not women can have abortions. It is a very, very dark slope to go down when you have people who are not elected making those kinds of choices over people's lives. And as a matter of principle, I think it should be opposed.
I'm just not interested in getting into arguments about how our constitutional settlement works on a day when I want to focus on the fact that we have restored the 1975, which predates the Gender Recognition Act, the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act, which was ported over into the 2010 Equality Act. So if we're going to play what came first, the Sex Discrimination Act came first. Nobody intended the Gender Recognition Act to destroy the protections that were there in the Sex Discrimination Act, and yet they did, and now that has been fixed.
You're one of my viewers says, Michelle, I feel emotional. This is all a big deal, but the very fact, whatever you think to the Supreme Court, the fact that we needed the Supreme Court to tell us what most of us already knew in the first place is unbelievable and sad. Well, I would say it's also a reflection on the absolute cowardice, the absurdity and the embarrassment of our political class. And not just the political class, by the way, the institutions in this country, much of the media. If I see one more time an actual male criminal that is pictured in a newspaper for being, I don't know, a paedophile, a rapist or whatever, and the headline says a woman has been charged with X, Y, Z, and you scream at the telly, that is not a woman. You know
Michelle,
it's not.
Those people don't have gender recognition certificates. And this is really key.
I'm talking about the media now, gaslighting people.
No. But Helen's point is that those people that you're rightly criticising are exactly the same as somebody with a gender recognition certificate who've lived as a woman for 25 years, who on their death certificate will have woman. She's saying, that's the point here, those people are identical.
I'm saying they're both men. Men with pieces of paper and men without pieces of paper are both men. And that's what the Supreme Court said, the Equality Act says too. It's biological reality. It doesn't matter when a man starts to say he's a woman, whether he did it yesterday, whether he did 10 years ago, whether he did 20 years ago, he's still a man. That's just a fact. And it's not denying anybody's humanity to say that. Half of humanity is men.
I just don't think it's common sense.
If I could just come in here, Michelle.
You mean it comes
yes.
Charlie Downs swooping in
I
there.
do just want to take a step back here, because I think what we need to remember is this ruling today refers specifically to the Equality Act 2010, and that's obviously already come up today. But actually, I would say that the Equality Act 2010 needs to go in its entirety, because it's at the root of so many problems that we face in our society today. And, I mean, for example, the Birmingham bin strikes. A equal pay dispute lies at the root of that, where women who were working public sector jobs disputed that they were not being paid equally to their male counterparts, and that meant that the bin workers who are currently on strike had their pays cut in order to pay for this equal pay dispute. It's also at the root of the public sector equality duty, which is now manifesting itself in this kind of two-tier system that we see in Britain, where in the name of equality, people are discriminated against on the basis of their race, if they're white, their sex, if they're male, and their faith, if they're Christian. And so I think that the whole idea that, I mean, it's kind of just like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, this ruling, because unless the Equality Act itself and the entire doctrine that emerges out of is scrapped, I just don't know whether we're actually going to, in the long run, see any real improvement in the way we think about identity in the law in this country.
Listen, you guys are utopians. I'm not sure I agree with you about your utopia, but anyway, you seem to think that we can't do anything until we can do everything. There was a specific problem that needed fixing, and today it was fixed. I'll just finish this sentence. So there was a specific problem, it needed fixing, it was fixed. Now we can go out and we can make sure that the guidance, the rules, the policies no longer pretend that men can be women, and that's great. And yes, there are a million other problems out there too, But this one has been fixed. And today, the very day that that judgment was handed down, you want to be talking about Birmingham bin strikes and the Equality Act and probably the Human Rights Act too and Supreme Court in America and so on. No, I'm going to stop and I'm going to say there was a great judgment today. That judgment was a judgment that enshrined biological reality over legal fictions, and that is good for everybody.
Yeah, but what I worry about, Helen, and I agree with everything you're saying, don't get me wrong here, I think this is a victory. But what I worry about is this ruling is going to contain and diffuse the kind of radical dissident energy that has surrounded this issue, because people think that they've won, when in reality the preconditions that created this idea of gender identity and trans and all that sort of thing, and elevated and gave power to those people who went along with that ideology, that still exists. That's still enshrined in law in the form of the Equality Act 2010. So I worry as well, as I've said already on the show, that it gives an easy win to people who actually, they still have mad ideas. I mean, you've seen Ed Davey, for example, saying that this is a victory. And it's as though he was, you know, holding his breath until this happened, until he was allowed to say, actually, that men can't become women. Because the Lib Dems have towed this line for years, Labour have towed this line for years. And so it's giving those people, it's making them seem reasonable. And that's what I worry about.
Well, Helen Joyce, it's almost time to bid you farewell. So a final thought from you before we do just that.
Can we not at least have 24 hours to be glad that women still exist in the most important anti-discrimination and human rights law in this country before we start saying, and what about every other bit of problems that there are in every other aspect of our constitutional settlement? Today was a great day, and I'm so happy that I was there for it.
It was, and Julie, one of my viewers, has said, Michelle, it felt like they were trying to erase women. Dame Andy, you call yourself the right decision by UK Supreme Court. Enough already. I can tell you many women getting in touch tonight saying that you really do feel quite emotional. And you know what? Can we have a moment to just kind of reflect on this judgment? Yes, we can. So you know what? Into the break, let's listen one more time to the spontaneous reaction from the women that were there and listening to this verdict. Let's go. Jubilation at last. Common sense prevailed. Helen Joyce, to you, to Sex Matters, thank you very much, and thank you for coming along tonight. I just do. I can't help it. I do. I feel great tonight. As a woman, I finally feel that the nonsense that we've been experiencing for such a long time has finally, perhaps, hopefully, started to be reversed. And to any trans people watching this, this was never about you. This was never about hatred. This was never about trying to harm other people or anything like that. Rights are protected for trans individuals. This was simply about trying to protect women and girls and our rights and our access to single-sex spaces. After the break, it's not all going to be good, I'm afraid, because apparently we are coming up to a summer of discontent. Strikes, strikes, and more strikes. I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading to southern Europe for some holiday sun, well, there is still some changeable weather around. There's a front pushing its way in across parts of Portugal and into western Spain, also affecting Madeira and later the Canary Islands. Then there's also going to be a fair bit of showery rain affecting Italy and into parts of Greece as well. But actually, as we go through the weekend across western areas, I'm expecting a bit more dry and at times sunny weather in which it should feel pleasantly warm.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long queues on the M6 if you are heading north away from Birmingham from junction 8 to 9 to the M5 and Wednesbury. Now, a lorry's broken down, causing long queues back to Junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction. In North London, a few miles north of Wood Green, the A105 Green Lanes blocked northbound at Winchmere Hill. That's at the scene of an accident just north of the North Circular. And the M2 in Kent remains closed coastbound from Junction 2 to Fredia Rochester. A lorry caught fire. However, there was also a serious accident involving a number of vehicles, causing long queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Dewbs and Co. with Charlie Downs, Michelle Dewberry and Aaron Bastani. Don't worry, everyone. Normal service will be resumed. Glyn's just got in touch and went, oh, this is a rubbish programme. Are you just going to talk about women all the time? I won't respond to that. I won't respond. Look, I'll tell you what, there's often a lot to be frustrated about in this country, isn't there? And now there's a suggestion that we could be about to face a summer of discontent. What am I talking about? Well, of course, I'm talking about strikes. Now, there's worries that we might see strikes all over the place now, whether it's NHS staff, teachers, civil servants, you name it. Aaron Bastani, is that the direction of travel?
Who knows? The catalyst for this whole debate is what's going on in Birmingham right now. We're 5 weeks into an all-out strike from refuse collection workers, bin workers, and drivers as well. Those bin workers, some of those bin workers are looking at a potential £8,000 pay cut, £8,000. Drivers, £10,000. So Unite the Union, who represents them, has had them out on strike, and they have said that we're willing to take this elsewhere. Of course, the biggest private sector union in the country is Unite. Quickly on Birmingham, this is really going to shock your viewers, I think. Like I say, these bin workers, some of them could be losing £8,000, £10,000 a year. Huge amounts of money. Nobody can afford to do that, really. Guess how much the CEO of Birmingham City Council is on?
About 300.
That's, well,
grand.
There you go. Top journalist, Michelle
yes.
Dewberry. Joanne Roney,
no flies on me.
Joanne Roney, CBE, basic salary of £295 a year, £295,000 a year, plus you get your benefits, your pension. She's probably about £500,000 a year. Do you know how many times she has gone to meet Unite about this dispute?
Well, unfortunately, because I'm good at my job, I do know the answer to that, and the answer is zero.
Zero?
Yes.
Zero?
I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm across my brief.
There you go. Zero. I spoke to somebody from Unite and they said they have not met the CEO of Birmingham City Council.
No, but they have, again, because I am across the brief somewhat, they have met other people. So they would argue that they've met other councillors and that they have met with other MPs.
So they've met the head of HR, for instance. That's one person they have met. So here's the thing, Michelle. Let's say you're the CEO of a business.
Yeah.
And there's a massive pay dispute going on. And actually, the people who are on strike, they're justified. They've got real grievance. It's very real. Losing £8,000 a year is very real. But you look, guys, we need to keep going as a business, otherwise we're in big trouble here. You, as the CEO, would go and talk to them, right?
I would. I'd be straight in.
You'd take the bull by the horns?
Of course, because your role as a CEO is to lead, and you're supposed to lead in the good and the bad and the difficult. That's literally what you get the cash for.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, is the big story. Right across this country, when it comes to local government, we have passengers, frankly, earning lottery numbers to do not very much.
Charlie Downs?
Yeah, well, some debate this is going to be, because I agree with everything Aaron just said. I mean, you know, I'm looking at these stories about the various strikes during the summer. And, you know, my gut, I'm not instinctively against unions, right? I think unionisation is a totally sensible and logical thing for a workforce to do, because that's how power works, actually, is organisation. If you can organise and hold your boss to account, I think it's totally reasonable for you to do so, especially if you're being mistreated and underpaid. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that the people in these cases are being mistreated and underpaid, because one of the reasons that, for example, civil servants are going to be striking is because of a crackdown on working from home. And this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with, you know, factory workers earning a pittance and being, you know, mistreated and injured on the job and all the rest of it. We're dealing with soft-handed, university-educated, city-dwelling latte sippers who are in their offices at the taxpayers' expense. We're upset because they can't sit at home watching Netflix whilst they're on their laptop, allegedly doing their job. And so when I hear that, I just think, you know, get lost, basically.
But then if someone, I don't know, so if you were working really hard and you were doing a dirty job, to put it bluntly, if you was a refuge collector and someone said to you, right, we're just going to take £8,000, which is what the claim is, we're essentially going to reduce your earnings by £8,000. What would you be doing? What would you do?
But this is the point. As I said earlier on the programme, it's almost comical how these strikes, especially in Birmingham, are coming about as a result of, you know, radical left-wing legislation, which is the Equality Act. It's come about because of an equal pay dispute, which has meant that bin workers have taken a cut to pay for people who are not doing the same job, but who feel they're being underpaid because they're not getting paid the same amount as their male counterparts. So, you know, it would be comical if it wasn't so depressing and if it wasn't painting such a miserable picture of our country.
Well, the miserable picture of our country, worry not, ladies and gents, because that conversation shall continue coming up after the break. I'll see you in 2.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, it's going to be a much brighter day for many, more in the way of sunshine, though we can't rule out some showers, but feeling warm where you do see those sunnier spells and lighter winds. And it's all thanks to this area of low pressure slowly shifting its way northwards, so eventually improving conditions into tomorrow. But we still hold on to this area of cloud and rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland for a time through most of the night. But any rain eventually easing across northern parts of England and Wales, leading to a much brighter start as we head through into tomorrow. And it should be largely dry across the southern half of the UK, clear skies, which means it's going to be turning chilly, possibly even some mist and fog by the morning. And it should be largely dry, though just a few showers starting to skirt across the south as we head through into the morning. But it's really across Scotland where we hold on to the cloud and outbreaks of rain as we head through into Thursday. Still fairly breezy across the far north of Scotland, but across Northern Ireland it's going to be a much brighter start if you compare it to this morning, though can't rule out a few showers around coastal areas. And across the rest of England and Wales it should be a largely clear and bright start, but still once again just a few showers clipping into southern coasts. Then through the course of the day we'll see more and more of those showers bubble up across central and southern parts, but in between plenty of sunny spells and light winds, so feeling warm and pleasant where you do see the sunshine. But across Scotland still plenty of cloud around, some showery outbreaks too, and also some showers starting to bubble up later across Northern Ireland. Warm with highs of around 17 degrees in the south, but still a little bit cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, for Good Friday, there'll be plenty of bright weather, mainly across eastern areas. We'll eventually see more and more cloud push into the west, once again with outbreaks of rain. This could be heavy at times, so do keep an eye out for further warnings. But as we head through Saturday and Sunday, brighter still, yes, with a chance of showers, but it should still feel pleasant where you do catch those sunnier spells for the bank holiday. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs and Curtle. 7 Aaron Bastali and Charlie Downs remain alongside me. If you've just tuned in, you've missed our conversation about the Supreme Court judgment today. You'll have to go back and watch that. That's a big deal, you know, for us women. I can tell you that for free. Also, as well, lots of you getting in touch and you're expressing your frustration about another court case today, that of the man known as Tommy Robinson. He was appealing his sentence, 18 months for contempt of court. Long story short, the judges were having absolutely none of that one, saying that it was a fair and appropriate sentence. Of course, he held in what many would argue very, very harsh conditions for the crime of contempt of court. Lots of strong opinions, of course, coming in on that one. Now, Junior has got in touch as well, saying, Michelle, I'm just watching your programme. It's all right, Aaron Bastani, talking about how much people like the councillors and the leader of the council earn, but why aren't you mentioning how much money the union leaders make? He says they must be making a fortune during all of these strikes, and he reckons that the people in charge of the unions must be licking their lips.
No, I mean, I'm sure they would like to be earning lots of money. You know, the average union boss is probably on around 100 grand a year, which is a lot of money. But when it comes to local government, I don't think people realise this. There are hundreds of people in local government across the country earning more than the Prime Minister, that chief executive, 300,000 or 295,000 basic, to do not very much. So I sort of would have to push back there a little bit. 1 in every £4 of council tax, by the way, goes to pay pensions of people working in local government. 1 in every £4. Quite extraordinary. And councillors, I have to be fair to councillors, get a very bad deal because the chief executive of a council can be on that kind of money. The council leader might only be on £35,000 a year. It's basically a full-time job. You have to give up your other job. You do that. They don't even get pension contributions, right? So we have very low incentives to have good people in local government, and yet we pay top dollar, often for useless people, to be council chief executives.
Do you know what? You could fix a lot of it. If I was the Prime Minister, I know we say I'm not, so luckily for all of you lot, I'm not. What about introducing performance-related pay? Literally, like properly, with strong KPIs, where if you're in the public sector and you are not performing to agreed metrics, out.
Well, I do think that there has been a phenomenon over the last 50 or so years where elite human capital has left the public sector and gone into industries like finance and tech. And so you are left with these very mediocre people who pursue public life. And I do think that raising the salaries and having kind of performance-based salaries might ameliorate that somewhat. But I don't think necessarily just cutting the pay across the board of people in the public sector is necessarily the solution, because you want to attract good quality people. But obviously the selection mechanism that's being used right now to bring people into the public sector is obviously actively selecting for people who will toe the line, who will, who are basically bad at their jobs. You know, they are inefficient. They are, in many cases, seemingly acting against the interests of the people they're supposed to be serving. So I don't know.
Kieran says, can I just say, I think striking is so selfish. Oh, we don't get paid enough, so let's ruin the lives of everyday ordinary people trying to live their lives. He said, I hate striking, and I really dislike anyone that gets involved in it. Blimey, you're a harsh man, Kieran.
I mean, look, these people don't want a pay rise. It's not that they're getting, a pay rise below inflation. They're going to lose, some of them, £8,000 a year. If I was to be told tomorrow you're going to lose £8,000, I literally can't afford to do that. And by the way, at the same time, they're going to lose £8,000.
One of my viewers has got in touch saying it's not as clear-cut as that. He's disputing the fact that actually it's a direct, clear £8,000 loss.
It is for some people in certain pay bands. I think the average is around £4,000 to £5,000. Some pay bands, it's an £8,000 cut. For some drivers, it's a £10,000 cut. The point is, we cannot stomach that. Most people on average incomes, I'm on an average income, cannot stomach that. Everybody out there knows that. And by the way, at the same time they're cutting these wages like this, council tax increases are through the roof. If the chief exec was on less money, you could be more sympathetic. But I think, frankly, given she's on 300k, it's ridiculous.
But the flip side of that is you want someone decent. So if you then start saying, you know what, we're going to reduce the salary, are you going to get the creme de la creme?
How is she? She's not even meeting people on strike. I mean, look, if you had a top person, yeah, I agree with you, by the way.
See, that shouldn't be permitted. You should not be able to preside over a council where you have got literal rubbish, nearly it's a different word, literal rubbish piled up all up the streets, and you are literally not meeting, you're not fronting up that issue. That just shouldn't be allowed, and nor should you be allowed if you're one of those MPs, because I've noticed that some of them have been going off to all different places, actually, when they should, I would argue, have their feet on that street. I've got to say, Labour, they're of course saying that there is they feel a fair and reasonable offer on the table. They want Unite the Union to actually get round the table and reach a resolution. What do you think to it? Do you think the bin strikes could actually spread to your neck of the woods? And if they did, how do you think people in your neck of the woods would actually respond? Because I can't help but notice that some of the people in Birmingham, some of the residents are acting absolutely shamefully. They're using it as an opportunity to have an absolute free-for-all and declutter their entire house by the looks of things, with microwaves and servers and all the rest of it. Pack it in. Anyway, look, that's all we've got time for. Thanks, gents. A different show to usual, but thank you very much. Thanks to you at home. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head our way into tomorrow, it's going to be a brighter day for many, though a risk of showers at times, but feeling much warmer in the lighter winds. And that's all thanks to this area of low pressure slowly shifting its way northwards across the country, leaving some slightly better conditions just to the south of this. But it's still sticking around as we head through into the overnight period, bringing some quite persistent rain at times, particularly across Northern Ireland, eventually shifting its way towards Scotland, where some heavier outbreaks still possible, particularly across high ground. But any rain eventually easing away from Wales, northern parts of England. And it's going to be quite a clear night across the southern half of the UK, so turning chilly, possibly some mist and fog by the morning, and also some rural frost. A chance of just a few showers starting to clip into the far south, but it's really across Scotland where we see the bulk of the cloud and the showery outbreaks. Still fairly blustery too around coastal areas before the rain eases away through the morning. And it's going to be quite a dry and bright start across Northern Ireland. Can't rule out a few showers around coastal areas. And similar across the rest of England and Wales. Largely clear to start, though still once again can't rule out showers, particularly across the south at first. And eventually we'll see more and more showers bubble up through the day. But plenty of sunny spells in between, particularly into the afternoon. With lighter winds, it is going to feel much warmer. A bit more cloud around across Scotland, still with outbreaks of rain, but even those easing away as we head through into the afternoon. But could still be a little bit blustery across the far north of Scotland. Shetland, for example, could see quite a breezy day, but highs of around 7